attendance, we have the people on the committee, which is Oswald, Downing, Toon, Brockmeyer, and Ober. In attendance, we also have Cindy, Kim, Dan O'Brien, Dan Held, Jody, and Carla, and the mayor. Did that get everybody? And we have some people in the audience. If anybody, has everybody had a chance to read the minutes? If they have, I'll take a motion to approve. Motion, do you have, is it a motion?
Yes, motion, yes.
Motion by Beth Toombs to approve. Do I have a second? Second by Elaine.
Brockman.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And then if you've had a chance to look at the bills, or do people have any questions on the bills? If not, I'll take a motion.
Motion approved.
Motion, what?
No, go ahead.
Motion by Elaine to approve the bills, seconded by Doug Downing. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Under public comment, does anybody in the public have something they wanna say? Okay, I have a couple.
No, I think
Oh,
I've got a
okay.
slip here.
Oh, I
That
didn't
goes
see
with
that.
you.
Okay.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, I'm Matt Turley, and just wanted to talk tonight about the water purchase agreement, and didn't see an agenda for this, but I think it was, at the last meeting it was discussed, that this would be one of the places that questions or concerns were brought up. So, I think most people know I'm opposed to the alluvial, and you know, I've been following this, I feel like, pretty closely for the past year and a half, something like that. So, and I've talked to this group before about it, not this group, at the regular city council, but there are a lot of you know, now that we've seen an actual purchase contract, I've got concerns, and I'm jumping into this before you guys have discussed it. I'd be willing to come back and talk later after you discussed it, if some of this is gonna be discussed anyway, or if this is, I'm jumping the gun here on some of this, but so we've got an estimated price of $4.30 per 1,000 gallons. That could change, I think I'm interested to know if any of the council members, I know not everybody's here tonight because this is a committee, but has anybody talked to anyone from Carrollton or Benel that have declined to participate in Illinois Alluvial?
This isn't really a question-answer public comment.
Well, you don't have to answer, but I'm
Yes,
going to.
I just want you to make
I'm gonna,
aware.
I am going
Okay.
to directly, it is,
That's fine.
Open Meetings Act allows me to address anyone in
Yes.
particular that I want to, even though that has not been changed. That is currently a city ordinance that is in violation of state law, so, I am going to do that.
Okay.
If nobody wants to answer, that's fine. Has anyone talked to Carrollton or, okay?
Well, Matt, I went to the meeting prior to them making their decision, to listen to their conversation.
Right.
I haven't talked to anybody since then. I've read the paper that said that, they've chosen not to go with alluvial based on their own calculations and their own needs.
Okay, yes.
So, but as far as Beneld, mine's just hearsay that they voted to go with, Litchfield Water
Right.
Supply.
Yeah, they did vote to go with Litchfield.
Is that
so.
true? Do you
That's
know
my
that?
understanding, just from what I've heard. I've got a direct contact in
true?
Carrollton. I don't have one in Benel.
I have not, I haven't spoken directly with either of those entities. They were attending some meetings. They let us know that they were gonna go another way, and,
Okay.
that was kind of the limit of my involvement with their decision. So I haven't spoken directly to them.
And I also spoke with Carrollton,
Okay,
and we had several conversations, up to and including, I believe when you guys went to the meeting that night, afterwards he told me that you guys were there, or your group is there. But anyway, the the mayor indicated that they had some other issues going on and that they were going to go in their own direction.
Okay. Because I think that the fact that, I think it's instructive when you have a large grant from USDA Rural Development that should entice more members to join, and it's been 4 or 5 months now, and I don't think anybody has actually joined since then. Is that fair to say? That I understand you say there's a couple that are looking at it. Is that public knowledge, or is that?
It is a fair statement that no one has officially joined since we've been granted the funding. Yes, that is true.
Okay. Is it, are you open to disclosing who those two parties are that you mentioned at
No.
the? Okay. I mean, so that kind of goes back to my main point is what is the rush to do this right now? What is the rush to sign this contract right now? Because there are a lot of unknowns. That's just one big one. Another big unknown we have is how are we gonna spend the money to update the infrastructure in Carlinville to deal with this different water supply? We know it needs to be done. We know that we've got ongoing infrastructure improvements. We don't have any, I don't think we've got a definite cost for how much that's gonna be. We know it's got to be done. It needs to be done anyway, but it's particularly important before you start pumping a different, surface water versus groundwater. So that's a big change. And the other, a huge unknown is what is our gap solution for our water supply while we wait up to 5 years or longer. I mean, we have an out after 5 years, but will the out be exercised after 5 years? We're that far into it, or are we really gonna exercise an out? And this is a 40-year agreement. I just don't, one other big thing, you've got a pending lawsuit that's, I think is going to be resolved within the next couple of months. You've waited this long, why wouldn't you wait and see what's gonna happen with that? I mean, if it's 2 months and it still doesn't happen, yeah, then you can look at it, but from what I can tell from judiciary, it's very close to getting a decision. So why would you do this now? I don't understand the rationale. We don't know if the other towns have signed. We know the other towns have not paid as much into this as we have. We know we've paid, what, $30,000? Some other towns have only paid $10,000, I think. It's my understanding. If the big deal about this is we're all paying the same, nobody's getting a volume discount, why are we going into this at a disadvantage compared to these other entities that have the same vote we do, the same power we do? It just doesn't make any sense. And this doesn't even get into the fact that we know we've got another solution on the table that's less expensive. For all practical purposes, if you look at the numbers compared to what it is, and there may be, maybe you can say, well, we don't really know about Litchfield, or the quality of the water isn't the same or whatever. Well, isn't that at least something to negotiate around? We didn't even, from what I heard at the last city council meeting, this wasn't even a negotiate. This is your contract, are you gonna sign it? And, I think if you're gonna sign it, you've gotta really negotiate that down. I mean, we were sold this project as we were gonna have all this control. Well, if we're gonna take the first contract they give us and not even negotiate it, and I'm not saying that, maybe you're gonna talk about that tonight, tomorrow night, and next week, maybe that's gonna happen, but I just wanna make sure that's considered. So, I mean,
I'll comment if you want me to comment. It's up to
You
you.
can just wait till we can
We'll talk about, are you gonna stay for the meeting?
yeah, I'll stay
I
for the
think
meeting.
some of your questions will be answered during the.
I would like to be able to talk again during the meeting if it's appropriate. I mean.
No, it's not appropriate.
Okay, well, then I'll keep going, because I've got a few more points to make.
5 minutes, it's 7 minutes.
I know.
Okay, so you're
Go
cutting me
ahead.
off? Okay.
Well, you could be here.
I mean, I think I've made most of the important points, but I just feel like, and no offense, Cindy, but this seems kind of ludicrous that you're this close to the Illinois Alluvial, but you're still gonna have a vote on this? I mean, it's a private company. I understand that You have the best, I'm not questioning your motives, I'm not questioning that, I'm just saying, it's just, it looks bad. You know, okay, fair enough, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Also, under public comment, I wanted, we're gonna try and bid out the health insurance for the employees at the city hall and the police department. It's kind of a long process, I don't really even have to, we don't need a motion or anything, I just wanna tell you that's what we're doing. Once I get some bids, I'll let people know what they are, and then we'll decide on it together. Also, I also passed out to everybody these budget sheets, if you wanna take them home and look at them, hopefully the finance meeting in March, Jody and I will have some figures down and we can go through it and we can kinda get it where we want it to be. Okay, now moving forward to old business, I have the IARWC water purchase agreement. Do you wanna start with it, or do people have questions on the committee here, or, okay. Then we'll start with Beth, is that what you wanna?
Oh, sure, I mean, we can start with the agreement itself and just work our way through it. I wrote notes out in the column here. Exhibit A is blank, we got that answer last Monday. Water quality, I have a question about the statement that, more specifically, all water supplied pursuant to this agreement or any renewal, extension thereof shall be potable, treated water that shall meet the applicable purity standards, blah, and on. I get that, but my question is the city going to have the responsibility to check that water from the meter to the distribution? And where, once it leaves the plant, is that water quality checked anywhere along the way in that distribution system? And how often, where at? What's that?
I believe the answer, it'd be best if Ronnie answers that question. That would be a more technical, how do they do, what kind of testing
check
will the
water
city be
quality?
responsible for?
Dan, feel free to speak up anytime if you see something different, but, in general, on any distribution purchase process, in this case, the city's responsibility and the deliverer's responsibility are at the purchase point, the meter. Water has to be correct at the meter, and then the city's responsible for everything after the meter. There will be intermittent points, and they will, I mean, I can't speak for sure for what they're gonna do, but in general, points along the main of the deliverer are checked regularly. They have to go through EPA at certain processes and times of month, or I don't know what you guys have here, Dan, if it's a couple times a month for some things and baptises and
Is that a
different
piece
things.
of that 10-state standard? That it'd be checked every so many miles, or after a lift station, or I mean, are
They
there guidelines?
typically, EPA sets the test points.
Okay,
That's the best way I can explain that, and I'm sure that it has something to do with miles. It has something to do with a number of things, a number of technical things that EPA sets.
okay. So you're saying that that is part of that 10-state standards and the Safe Drinking Water Act? So it doesn't, my question is, should that be added to the contract so that as this water flows through 45 miles of pipe, we are assured that it's tested along the way? And does that need to be spelled out, or is that a piece of this standard?
The contract probably says, we will deliver you with
Potable water.
potable water. That's all that any purchaser needs to be concerned about. What happens on the delivery side is all gonna compile at your purchase point.
Right. So then we will have a guideline set up here in Carlinville on testing that water once it comes through that meter, the master meter.
Yes. Typically, we pull 4 samples a month in the first 15 days, and then we pull 4 samples a month, I believe, in the second half. Okay, so if you're talking about the side of the Carlinville side, you get floor in the first half, floor in the second, okay? Alluvial will also have responsibility to pull tests from different locations to check, chlorine residuals and all that stuff to make sure that the water's all potable on their side, and we have to do it on our side to ensure that it's potable on our side, so.
Thank you. That was a big question for me because it wasn't, in my mind, spelled out in the contract, but if it's included in that standards, great. The requirements for the maximum qualities, I have questions about maximums and minimums. You require that we meet a certain maximum usage. What happens if we lose customers and all of a sudden we don't meet even the minimum? What happens to our rates? What happens, do we get penalized for that? We get penalized for using too much. Do we get penalized for using not enough? It's a 5%, if I remember, 5% penalty, yeah, if we exceed, our usage. Do we get penalized if we don't use what is quoted as our minimum? Or our maximum daily quality, or quantity? If we don't meet that, what happens to our rates?
I'm sorry, can you tell me exactly where you're?
Well, I'm combining actually, number 7, excess usage penalty,
Number 7,
under the purchasers.
Page 6,
Yes.
well, the maximums, I believe, Ronnie, please, jump in here, the maximums are based on, they have some margin also, don't they? Our daily maximums.
Well, maximums, if you exceed maximums, that's great, because if you're selling more water, then you keep your costs down. The only reason that statement is in there is because at some point, if somebody gets a new ethanol plant and you have to increase the capacity that the water treatment plant can deliver, then it's just a statement that says there may be some improvements, and everybody needs to understand that if there are improvements, that cost per thousand could go up, but if you're exceeding your maximum, any upgrades to a plant are likely gonna be offset by the volume of water you're selling. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Kim?
Well, it appears in 7, it kind of reads like whether you don't purchase enough or use enough, or rather you go over your, excess, that, you're gonna be penalized either way.
I
So
think-
then it's not different, so,
I think that those types of things have to be in the contract, because you have to have some method by which people have to alert the company when their usages are going to change. You can't, if you're building a plant to meet your needs, obviously we'll have some capacity over our immediate need, but you have to have a method by which we know how much water everybody is gonna need and how much they're gonna be using. And we need some kind of guideline for how that's gonna work, because, you know, the company itself can't, we have to operate in the black. I mean, you can be a not-for-profit, but you can't operate in a deficit all the time. So there have to be guidelines to which we say, you need to use in this range of water. And then you're agreeing to do that. If you're not gonna start pulling water from somebody else and not using water, because the whole setup is to meet your needs. So I think it's appropriate to have guidelines. You know, we need you to use this between these maximums and these minimums in order to keep our plant viable for the future. So, to me, those are common sense things to have in there as guidelines, so that we protect the viability of our project long-term for the, that's.
I agree with you in point, that you do need some sort of guidelines, that if you if a city or whoever, a user sees that their usage is going to go up significantly or down significantly, you need some sort of method to alert IARWC that that's going to happen. I don't think you should be penalized for it. Maybe what would be better for each entity is that there's a clause that if you know that your usage is going to be changed either way, you give a 60-day notice or whatever would be needed by the company to adjust their capabilities of producing that water.
I think
I don't think a penalty is fair.
I think the penalties keep, they also address the need to pay for that water. If you're going over, who's gonna pay for it?
Oh, I agree, you pay for it, but
And,
not with a penalty.
and with updates to the system. I don't think it's inappropriate to have, I don't personally think it's inappropriate to have penalties in place if you go over and under and you don't alert the company and we don't allow for a change in usage. I don't think I don't think you'll find a lot of, I shouldn't say that, cause somebody will quote me. I would be interested to know if you would find a water purchase contract that did not do this exact thing. That would have guidelines, and if you get outside the guidelines, you're gonna have to pay to keep the company, but you're gonna have to pay if you don't use enough, because our project is based on how much our usage is. And you're gonna have to pay if you use too much, and we have to upgrade the system. I don't see, something would have to happen that was pretty big for either of those things to be a problem. And we'd have to not know about it for a while in order to, it'd have to be sudden and catastrophic, I would think, for this to be an issue. But, and I'm not saying those things don't happen. I just would be interested to know if there's ever gonna be a water purchase contract of any kind that doesn't have parameters for usage. I just think it would be
I
kind of
agree with you,
crazy
Cindy, and
not
I'm not debating that you have to have some sort of guidelines. What I'm suggesting is that it would be better for the city if those guidelines were that we gave you notice. If we didn't give notice, or any of the entities did not give notice, then I could see penalizing. But give them like a time frame to give you the notice so that their usage can be adjusted at the plant level.
Would it be in the city's best interest if this is not in there and anybody else can do the same thing? They can just tell you,
Sure.
give you notice, suddenly they're not
As far as
using enough
purchasers
water.
go, sure, we don't care. What,
I'm sorry?
as far as the purchasers go, yes, it would be to their advantage that you took it out. It's always to their advantage not
But
to
the
have to
point
pay a
is to-
penalty.
I guess I don't understand your point of view. I apologize, I'm trying, but I think those parameters are in there to protect each of the entities and to create a situation where we all know these are the rules and we must obey them, or there are guidelines for how you fix that if they are not. And I think personally, from the city's point of view, I want that in there because it applies to all four or more of the other entities involved. So
It's there to protect IARWC, not,
IARWC is made up, I don't know how to communicate this very well. IARWC is made up of the entities who are signing you're signing this contract as if you're purchasing water from somebody who has no attachment or has no interest in Carlinville whatsoever, and I don't believe that to be the case. So that's, I guess, what's confusing to me is that the contracts are written in the interest of the company, but the company is made up of a board that has the interests of the entities at heart. So I guess that part is confusing to me.
Can I ask this question a different way?
yes.
So,
please.
what if we need to exceed the maximum that we're allowed because we have a huge expansion in the city of Carlinville, which would be great? And what if there is excess, you still have excess at the plant that you could sell to us? What is the process for the city to get additional water, be above our maximum amount, and do it in a fair way to the rest of the members, but not have that penalty? Could we purchase is there a way to purchase additional water for the city of Carlinville if there was excess left over at the plant? Is there a process, is that a?
Cindy, would you?
Dan?
I wanna give you guys some numbers here that you could work with. okay? So if you take all the flow per day from the water plant, and you put it out there, and you divide it by, and total it, divide it by 365, that number will come out to about 775,000 gallons, something like that a day.
775.
775. Okay, so, Alluvial's saying that you can't pull more than double that for 30 days in a row, okay, without being penalized. So basically, in a month like this month, we used about 20 million gallons in January. That's what we treated out of the plant. So to exceed the maximum, you would have to draw almost, I believe, 45 million gallons from Alluvial over a month. And so if all that water passed through our mains, and we were collecting water on all that, I think we'd probably be more than happy to pay, you know, whatever that penalty is for exceeding what that maximum is. So we also have 1.6 million gallons in storage here, okay, which is also a good thing, because in the event that Alluvial has a temporary issue or something like that, we will actually be able to float on our own towers
Right.
for perhaps a day and a half over the winter months.
That was my, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is it would have to be a very large difference. It's not, they're not saying, the guideline isn't, the parameters aren't small, they're very large. So you would have to have nearly like a double growth or something in town to exceed, I don't know. I just feel like maybe maybe it isn't as restrictive as you're assuming it is.
2 times
Well,
the
it
purchase
goes-
previous
This 775,000 gallons a day average, is that in this contract anywhere? The
It's
numbers?
based on our current daily usage is my understanding of it. It's, that
It
all of
shouldn't-
our numbers that we use for the plant size and for all of our application and everything was based on our daily usage, and the guideline goes, you know, to the front and back of that number for each entity.
But should that not be in
Yes,
writing?
they have to have all of
It's,
that.
if I might, it's in writing, it's on page 4, number 3.
That's what I was asking.
Purchaser shall initially provide seller with a good faith estimate of its average daily demand.
And they have those numbers because they had to be included in, the preliminary engineering agreement, because that's how you decide what does the treatment plant need to be able to handle in a day. So they do have those numbers, for each entity.
And it should be on this contract.
But it says two times.
Yeah, that's.
We get 2 times our estimated average.
I honestly just don't believe we're ever gonna have a situation where we need 2 times our average for 30 straight days, but I mean, I think it's a fair parameter.
How many days, Randy, when we had that big water break, the water main break, how many days were we without water at that time? Do you remember? Anybody remember?
Wasn't more than 3. I don't think it was over 3.
Okay. So we would have the storage capacity equal to 2 times previous year's average daily demand?
I think it's stated in the contract that there's 2 situations, one where you have less than what your average daily demand is for storage, and then one where you have your average daily demand for storage.
And you also have a clause for emergencies, if we have an emergency situation, we need to do something else, there's a clause in there to allow for that. If, you know, we can't meet the demand, so it does protect your right to do what you need to do if there's an emergency, so.
And my question what if our demand drops significantly? There's nothing in here to address that. Do you need something in there to address that?
No, it's the same clause. I mean, you're always gonna be talking to Alluvial. 5 years from now, our demand may be up, it may be lower. I mean, it could go lower for efficiency if we're required to be more efficient because water is becoming more precious.
So that would fall under the rate adjustment clause that they would,
Well, no, it
adjust
says you're
rates.
gonna keep them informed and, so, I mean, you're talking about gross differences, but you're always, correct me if I'm wrong, the engineers here, you're always going to inform Alluvial as to what's changing in your community. And they're gonna be able to see what your usage is, right?
Right.
Yeah,
You're always gonna have representation too. It won't
Yeah.
always be me, but you'll always have somebody who represents you on that board, who communicates
yeah.
with that
Under,
board.
under adequate supply, you know, temporary failure shortages, that's just under initial demand, notice of increased requirements, so we just tell them, we believe our requirement's gonna exceed the maximum. But we would know that, I think, because of new construction or, and,
Well, probably won't even happen with new construction,
Right.
because with new construction, your demand's gonna go up like this. So your average is gonna change all the time. You're talking about a situation
Right,
where you
yeah.
go from here to
It
here
would have to be
Yeah.
catastrophic.
in 6 months.
difference.
right,
Okay, are we done with that? Oh,
No.
well, go ahead.
So a couple questions here. One, so what is, so there's, the phrase used is used a lot here, emergency. So except in emergencies, what is classified as emergency? What do you consider emergency?
Well, I'm guessing, I mean, I can't say that we have a list of things that qualify as emergency. I think that's probably purposeful in some ways to leave some margin for knowing, you know, who can come to us and say that there's been a major break in town, or there's, I mean, I don't even know. Emergency means the usual thing isn't happening and we don't have the water supply that we need to meet. So I think it's purposely allows for some latitude. I mean, especially for Carlinville, because right now we have, you know, a failing system, and the contract wanted to allow for us to meet the need until, we can pull water from Alluvial permanently. That was put in there, I mean, those things are put in there purposely to protect Carlinville and let them be able to do what they feel is fitting until this contract, is enacted and we start taking water from them. So I think, it's left purposefully a bit vague so that you can say, this is the situation and we need to pull water from Henderson or whatever, you know, so. Not that any of those things are in place yet, and those things are not on the agenda tonight. But, I think it's allowing some latitude for Carlinville to do what they need to do in the interim.
But that's broad, so I mean, what happens if a future council deems that there's an emergency? What problem is that gonna be for us legally
They'll
with?
still have to stay within, I mean, unless they can prove that they can't stay within the guidelines, they'll have to stay within the guidelines. So, I mean, if a future council decides they wanna pull, which we're looking at our options, but I mean, I'm not sure that we would ever be hooked up to somebody that could meet even half of our daily need, other than Alluvial. So, I think that there wouldn't be the availability of just getting out of the, you know, not taking water from them that at least keeps them at their minimum capacities. Ronnie, you can jump in if you want to.
I'm not sure I completely understand the question. Are you worried about an emergency in town?
Well, I'm more, the phrase is used here several times in this contract, and it says except in emergencies. Well, your interpretation of emergency and my interpretation of emergency is gonna be two different things. So what is the city of Carlinville's liability, or what is what would be considered an emergency? And then also, what do future councils consider an emergency? It's gonna be two different things. So that language is pretty wide open. And I know, just like Cindy says, it's wide to allow for, you know, for the variables that could happen. But, you know, it's not black and white, so.
Yeah, what do you consider an emergency?
What's that?
What would you consider an emergency?
And that's a good thing. I have not sat down and thought about what I consider emergency.
Tornado would take out your water tower,
Mm-hmm.
earthquake, make bunch of water lines.
The EPA, I believe, does also have what is considered an emergency, so,
if I might, with the chairperson, one of the reasons this contract does not have every detail about things like emergency, just like the example you gave when the big pump failed, okay? A lot of times you don't know how serious those things are, so what is an emergency? It's very hard to determine. I think we all have an idea that emergency is an unexpected, probably catastrophic event. Now, whether that old pump that failed years ago, it turned into an emergency, but the failure of a pump might not normally be considered an emergency on the level of a tornado or an earthquake. But one of the reasons you have a document like this, that you're trying to have a base understanding without defining every small piece of it, is because it is between 5, 6, maybe 10 parties over time, and it has to be flexible enough to give interpretations over a 40-year period. But, and it also has to protect all the parties. So this is not like your agreement with Google that you've all clicked I agree, okay? Which, if any of you printed those agreements out, they go on forever, and extremely, most of those agreements, like your telephone agreement, will limit your rights. In this case, this is a rather straightforward, I think, contract which covers all the bases without going into details, because you'd be tied up in knots as to what is an emergency. And this is coming from a guy who knows about emergencies, right? Okay, well, it's harder to describe what may be an emergency. It could be that there's a terrific accident that impacts, I don't know, the town of Dorchester. We don't know what that is, but I think we generally know that it's, and we could look it up in the dictionary, is, you know, it's an unexpected event with catastrophic consequences, and it would be something more than simply a water leak. But I think this contract is not going to cover and drill down on everything, just like, for example, a lot of the legislation that the mayor has passed or other people have. Why? Because this is a contract over 40 years. It may grow over that time, it may not, but there will probably be changes and there'll be challenges. But by saying emergency, some of that will be defined by the board members. What is an emergency? Well, emergency to me might not be an emergency to you. So I think this contract is excellent, because it's a pretty straightforward governing document that I think has enough room to grow over time. And it also lays out the basic parameters by which these members, who all share governance, can govern. Because if it's too tight, then it's very hard. I mean, this is not an agreement between me and Doug for the sale of a house, right? The realtor contract goes on and on and on. But that's just the two of us. This is trying to accomplish something for, well, several thousand people, maybe as much as 25,000 people. I think it's a pretty good contract, but I think if we wanted to spend time, I think it's an excellent question, but I think it's relatively unanswerable, because we don't know what, we know what an earthquake, but for example, if somebody had an earthquake, it might, or that's not a good example. Randy gave the example of tornado. Well, Taylorville had an emergency. Parts of Taylorville didn't have an emergency, right? They weren't touched. So it could be the same thing here.
And that was my question. I didn't know if that needed to be defined, because down the road, I mean, your interpretation, like I said, your interpretation of emergency and mine are gonna be different.
Well, but I think, but if there is, I think there's an assumption here that the parties will work in good faith to address those issues as they come up. Because ultimately, Alluvial's responsible for the lines, which is the members of this co-op, and the cities are responsible for everything past the master meter. Well, that's pretty straightforward.
And my second question was, okay, the purchase price, the water rate, is at $4.30 per 1,000 gallons, and that's estimated only at this time. And obviously, there is a possibility that could increase, correct?
Certainly.
Okay, and what if the whole cost of doing this whole thing is a lot less than we anticipate? Would there, and obviously there would be a decrease in that rate, correct?
Yes, because
Potential.
we're not for profit, so we
Okay.
cannot exceed. I mean, we can't just go, I mean, we have parameters for what we have to keep in certain savings account, like the rural development, I mean, they set up exactly what kind of
Yes.
accounts you have to
Yep.
have, the whole thing. So we have a lot of guidance in that area, and they'll continue to guide us until we don't owe them money anymore. So, we'll have to stay in those guidelines. I think to keep your not-for-profit status, you can't just start charging people whatever and keeping the money, but,
And that's the
I'm hopeful that number will go down.
me too. So then that's the rate we get, so then we'll have to charge an additional for our
Your
cost.
rate is already above that,
Yeah.
so, and then this council decides how they want to adjust that or not in the future, and what kind of bulk rate they wanna give a bulk user or not. So all of that will be the decision of this board, once we've jumped this hurdle, then you can decide how you wanna go from there.
And Dan, our current rate is $3.20, correct?
I got it on my phone, I have a picture
That's
of it
okay.
on my phone, so it's
I think-
$15.95 for the first $1,500 or $1,500
I
or
have that, I
something
have
like
that here,
And that graduates.
I thought you were talking about the cost.
if you want it.
No.
The cost to make them.
Inside the city, it's, well, is this a current one? It's a photograph one,
Should be.
it's $13.59, the first, so it's higher than that now?
Yeah.
For the first 1,500,
Yeah,
1969.
okay, so it says, this is outdated, I guess. But it's showing, the next 8,500 at $9.06 inside the city. Your bulk users are at 273, over 150,000. So, you'll have to make some decisions for sure, but, we're making those now, cause I'm not sure what it's costing us to make water per thousand, but, sure, it's not $2.73, so. We'll have to make those decisions as a board here. And you would have had to make those decisions as a board, whether you did nothing, or you did Litchfield, or you did this, because you're gonna pay, you're gonna pay no matter what you do, because the cost of making water is going up.
Kim, did you have something?
Yes, I'd just like to make an observation. You are totally correct, everybody's idea of an emergency is different. When you get 4 entities or however many that go into an agreement together, they all go in with like-minded thoughts, we hope. And then somebody doesn't agree with the other's idea of an emergency, or they all get a little bit separate contracts, which we've been told will happen. And then there is a problem. And then you have a vague contract that a good lawyer can tear apart and make say whatever he wants. I see this contract, the way it's written, is looking only out for Illinois Alluvial and not for the entities who are purchasing water.
I have to speak
Yeah,
on that,
go
because
ahead.
I personally, on a personal level, I sit there every meeting and I think about what's good for our city. I would not sit there quietly while they did something that I thought was not good for the city ever. And I think nobody else would sit there. The structure of something like this does require some level of faith in the fact that people will sit on a board and they'll try to do what's right for their entity, just like we do here every meeting. And I trust that you're trying to do that too, whether you agree with me or you don't, and majority rules. And I think it does require some level of trust. And I know you don't sit at the meetings, and maybe my word holds no weight, but I would trust these people. We do all think of what's good for each other. And Carlinville is the largest user so far, and they do think about what's good for us. So I understand that it takes a little bit more faith in the process than just, what we're doing right now. I get that. But to suggest that I or anybody else would put together a contract that somehow is to the detriment of our entity or any of the others, to me, is just not accurate and sort of humiliating for me.
Well, nobody wants to humiliate you or attack you personally. It's not what this is all about. Contracts are binding agreements, regardless of who sits in that seat at that board. If you have a tight contract that spells everything out so that it's clear to everybody, this is what you have to do in this circumstance, and this is what you have to do in that circumstance, nobody is left with a trust issue. It's the contract needs to be as tight as it can be going into it, in my opinion.
I think what's confusing
before
for
we
me
get
is that
started.
through this conversation, it's like, this is too, everything is, this is too tight, this is not tight enough, so I guess that's what's confusing to me, is we talk about the maximums and minimums, and we're worried that it's too specific, and then we talk about what's an emergency mean, and it's too broad, so I think that it's purposefully has to be, as he said, there has to be flexibility, and it's to your benefit to have some flexibility in your contract. That is to your benefit. And you will have, I don't forget that you will always have representation on the board. No one is sitting in a room where you aren't represented making any decisions about your contract or your usage or what product is delivered to you. That would be happening if you bought from a third party and you had no representation. So I just wanna make sure we keep that in mind, that if the contract is loose, it's to your benefit that it's loose.
And if I might,
Yes, go ahead.
okay, the other consideration you have to make here is, besides the other members, the members are on both sides of the table. So the contract has to be strong enough so that Dorchester, Carlinville, all the current and future entities are all dealt with the same way. The other party at the table though, even though it's, the Alluvial has to comply with all their rules and regulations, let alone state regulations, is Illinois Department of Agriculture Rural Development. They've got certain requirements, including certain amounts of money that have to pay for this very, very extremely once-in-a-lifetime grant that this city is part of, an alluvial. And so a lot of this language has to accommodate the rural development, what their expectations are for loans. And they're not gonna allow us, I mean, it can't be 6 people, 6 individuals, because like I say, it's unusual in that you're on both sides of the table. It has to be strong enough that the supplier has the income, has the ability to repair, has the ability to deal with emergencies, and has the ability to handle the different needs of very much different size entities. And who knows who's coming in the future. Actually, I think it's an excellent contract. The contract's been reviewed by Scott Schultz, okay, attorney for Jersey Rural Water. It's been reviewed by Nicole Thomas, attorney for Dorchester. Rick Verticchio, attorney for Bunker Hill. Okay, David Foreman, who has been part of these water supply contracts and has seen this work with some success at other water districts he's been involved in, or I should say, I don't know what they call it down in Collinsville or wherever it is. But these, and also water supply contracts, which I think probably Woodard and Kern has had to deal with in other places. They have to allow, they've got all the basics here. What are we buying? Where are we buying it from? What are the standards for that water? How are we gonna deliver it? How fast are we gonna deliver it? 45 PSI, okay? What do we do if there's do we have room if there's an emergency? I mean, it covers all the bases that you would expect any contract to have. And it has, we can't define every emergency over a 40-year period, but I think people will know it when they get it. And it's got tremendous flex in it, like I say, because of this business of how much water is used before you get hit with a penalty. It's a lot of water. We don't want to penalize everybody. On the other hand, and Ronnie, you correct me if I'm wrong, or Dan, part of the other issue here is if you don't maintain your water lines, or like I think Dan gave us an example a couple weeks ago, and your tower gets drained by accident because you don't have systems in place to flag that, well, who should pay for that? You know, if you've caused a problem to the system. Well, I think they're putting things in here to make sure that it's fair to everybody, and like I say, you're on both sides of the table here, so it's a little unusual. But this is a very good contract because there's a lot of things that could get lost in the weeds. But what do we think it's gonna cost? Who's gonna deliver it? What happens if they don't deliver it? You know, there's, all the bases are in here. This isn't a complex contract. It's pretty straightforward because there's one product and, we're a joint, organization to deliver it. And so we need to treat each other fairly.
Elaine?
We pay Dan to give us information and to guide us, correct? We just voted him to come to the committee meetings. I make a motion that this conversation is over. He says it's a good contract, it's a good contract. I make a motion this conversation is over and we move on. These people that are doing this, that are part of this, are not stupid people, Beth.
Elaine, please don't attack me personally because I have questions.
You've had questions since the beginning of
I
time.
have, you're right, I have, and I do question just about everything. And I do have another question on number 16. Does that affect our future ability to get loans or grants from USDA Rural Development? Or how would that affect, is there any effect on that?
Are you asking me?
Oh, sure.
I think you'd have to ask rural development.
Oh,
I think, I mean,
well, there's a
If
question
you
we
have
didn't get
current
answered.
loans with rural development, you have to get permission from them to have more loans, correct, Ronnie?
All right.
Yes,
Okay,
but as long as the process with rural development is that as long as you show that you can pay off those loans, they're happy to lend you the money.
so that's in
So if it, I
there,
don't know what 16 says, I'm sorry, I don't know what 16 says specifically, but if you needed another rural development loan to do a sewer project in town,
Yeah.
that's fine. You just have to show that you'll do what you need to do with the rates in town.
well, but an important point there is, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be the city of Carlinville, an obligation to repair a sewer break
Right.
in the city of Carlinville. Illinois Alluvial is the entity that is securing this grant,
That's right.
so that's a different thing.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with Carlinville in
Right.
terms of loans.
So Carlinville would be subject to whatever their current regulations are.
Well, Kim, did you have something you wanted to say? Or a question you're on?
No, not right now.
Okay, Beth, do you have another question?
Possibly on the assignment section, either party may assign its rights and delegate its duties hereunder. And provided this
What page?
contract, on page 7, number 13. As I read that, I just wondered if, like in the future, if things aren't working out with Illinois Alluvial, does this give them the right then to bring in another entity such as American Water or something like that?
Well, this assignment clauses are, I would dare say, in every contract that's ever been drafted, okay? And what it means is that the obligations of the parties continue, even if it's delegated to another entity. So let's say that 30 years from now, we have an example in-house. We got Woodard and Current. The city has certain obligations to make repairs, perform certain duties in the city of Carlinville. The city has those obligations, whether it does it with its own employees or hires a contractor. We can ask Woodard and Current to do certain, and assign them to do certain things, but we're still obligated to fulfill whatever contracts are currently out there. So, what this is saying is, let's say some turned into super alluvial and they decided to supply water and they called it a different name. Their obligations to us are still the same, okay? Maybe they now have 25 people and they call it Illinois Super Alluvial. They still have to supply us with everything they've said in this contract over time. And the same thing if we assigned it, because now we're the city of Carlinville and Wamak, okay? We still have our obligations under this contract, even if the nature of our entity has changed. But as it says, the contract is binding upon our successors. So if we're the city of Carlinville and Wamak, that's the successor city. we're still obligated under this contract to fulfill its terms, which is buy our water from Alluvial. And that happens
Or
sometimes.
someone that they assign their rights to.
Well, that could be, because maybe but they still have to supply us with alluvial water. But that's a standard clause, just like that, well, that whole page, the governing law, assignments. These are pretty standard clauses in there, and you'll find an assignment clause, well, you'll find one in your mortgage, you know.
Sure.
Well, the obligation to pay the mortgage doesn't change, cause, well, you're dead or you got married to somebody else.
Thank you, Dan. Do we have more?
I got another
Okay,
question.
Doug.
Now, here's the deal. At the end of the day, no matter which way we go, everybody in this room is responsible for the direction the city takes. So I don't think it's wrong to ask questions. I think it's wrong if you don't ask questions. Besides our city attorney, which I value his opinion, everybody needs to know what's in this contract, because you answer for that to the voters. You answer for that with the community. So, I think it's wrong to ask questions. I think you're not doing your job if you don't ask questions. So, with that said, one more question. The rate again, obviously is open-ended. I know we're at $4.30 per 1,000 gallons is what it says, and an issue could go higher. And I'm not attacking the project, and I'm not attacking Cindy. I want to protect the city. What happens if the project goes way above cost, which I know there's a built-in contingency in there, but I'm just trying to protect the city and the people, the community who use the water. So, what about the rate itself? How can we protect from going too much higher?
Well, first of all, if the rate goes higher because our project grows, then that would be mostly because, I would think, because we have more entities come on and we decided that it's a good risk to take them on and expand the project. And so your usage would then also go up considerably. So your rate would be adjusted based on, okay, the project's grown, but we also have this extra usage. So it may not go up. It also would depend on, I did ask that question of rural development when we were having our meeting, and they said, okay, your project goes over. Well, I mean, we put in contingencies, but you come back to us and you say, we have to adjust our budget. You know, it's not like it's unheard of, and you know, you put in again for an increase in your money, and you have to apply, obviously. But they didn't, I mean, rural development did not seem alarmed about that at all, because they have built in a considerable amount of money for contingencies. So, I mean, I don't know that any seller is gonna sit here and tell you this water rate is cut in stone and it's never gonna go up and it's never gonna go down. I can tell you if you buy it from a third party who's profiting from it, you're taking a much larger risk than a not-for-profit on which you have representation saying, I'm not, you know, we can't pay that for. I mean, we have some control over how big the project gets based on how many users we're taking in, and nobody wants to make a decision, nobody at that table wants to make a decision where we've taken a risk and hurt ourselves in the process. So, I think, am I answering your question?
Not really, but, not really.
Okay, well,
So,
I don't, ask the question again.
At the end of the day, I mean, I'm either gonna vote for this or vote against this, but if I vote for it and we get up to $6 per 1,000 gallons or higher or whatever, and how many people in this room would sign a contract where, well, it could be 6, but it could be more depending on what the final cost is.
Well, you
So
do
I just wanna make
that.
sure that we're protecting.
And it could be
The people
less.
don't have a
I know it
promise
could be
right
less,
now
but
what
what-
their
what
water
if it's
rate
more?
is gonna be.
Yeah, if I could. Yeah, well, Doug, you're right, but I mean, our water rates in the city are subject to our adjustments, you know, and it has to, I mean, you understand it has to be flexible, cause we don't know, for example, inflation. Right now, we've got about a 2% inflation rate. Well, a 2% inflation rate alone would drive that rate up. If other entities join this, and they're not discouraged from joining by lawsuits and other things, those rates will go down, because the more users.
Well, I fully understand that, but I'm looking at the rates going, I'm not concerned about going down. I'll be all in favor if they go down, but how do we protect it from getting too much higher?
Well, I think in C, seller or purchaser agree water rates, page 3, it's an estimate of what the water is, we'll know that when it gets done. But water rates, I mean, a big protection, to me, the biggest protection in this contract is the second sentence there. Water rates shall at all times be equal among all sellers' members. And yes, the seller reserves the right to annually adjust water rates. But then there's a very strict clause, which requires a 2/3 supermajority,
Page 4.
that if you're going to adjust it beyond that annual adjustment. So, to me, I see you're very, and I think you and Beth and other people are very, you know, Kim, everybody's very in tune with this, that we don't want to see big jumps. But to me, just like you are here, how hard is it going to be to get Dorchester, Bunker Hill, Carlinville, everybody who has a member on the board, especially if it gets bigger, which it should, to agree to say, oh, let's raise the rates a whole bunch of, you know. I think that's gonna be, I think that's your biggest protection, and certainly it's just about impossible to do during the year. So these rates would have to be pretty well considered. And also, you're looking at time, which, I don't know, I mean, Chicago Tribune did a big article on this, what, about a year ago, looking at water rates all over the state. And, you know, Illinois Aqua, Illinois American, buying up country companies left and right. In fact, the legislature passed bills to make it easier for them to buy it up. Those rates are all way higher than what these are. And I think we've had research done here to look at the surrounding communities as to what the rates are. Those rates could go up significantly. I think what the big reason to vote for this is, I think it's why, I'm guessing why the council voted to do this in the first place is because we know our rates, without doing this, are going up significantly because of repairs and replacement of the lakes and the pumps and everything. So I think there's a very good protection in here, I guess, from a legal point of view, because it is not just the city of Carlinville deciding, and even in the city of Carlinville, right? It's the council, it's the mayor, it's you guys have to decide that, guys and gals. But I think it's got a prevention to say, we're gonna make it nearly impossible for you to raise rates except once a year when you look at this every year. But they certainly will go up because we know inflation will go up, I would guess, I don't know. But they could also go down because, again, correct me if I'm wrong, you folks that are more informed about this, these loans are gonna be dispersed over time and paid back over time. They're not writing a check for $66 million on one day, right?
That's correct.
So I mean, stuff will be getting paid back, so it's not as if this entire amount will be due all at once.
I just wanna add to that, right now, there's nothing in the ordinance book that allows for a cap on how high we could set the water rate tomorrow. So we don't even have that within the city of Carlinville, we don't have a cap. I'm not even sure it takes a super majority of the council to change the water rate to a higher rate. So I think there's more protection here than there is at the city level. And I would also say, I wanted to say this earlier, I forgot to, but I wanted to address something that Matt had asked, why the hurry or whatever. This is in the guide 3, so rural development says part of guide 3 to get to closing is you need to have a contract with your purchasers. And you can't wait until every I is dotted and every T is crossed. You don't go to closing, because it's on the list and you have to get it done. So we've chosen to do this now because it's something we can do now. And there are some items that have to wait, and this is something that we need to get in place, and I think it's a good faith, and it builds some solidarity in our board with our partners, and I think that's a good thing. Let's do that now, before everybody, before there's money out from rural development, and let's do that now. Let's put all of let's show that we're solid on this.
Yeah. I got a legal question on that then. If we do that, if we sign this, approve this now, and Carlinville loses the lawsuit, where does that leave us?
Well, to start with, Alluvial's not part of the lawsuit.
But Carlinville is, and if Carlinville
Carlinville's
loses.
part of the lawsuit,
and
there's been no rulings that affect Carlinville. In fact, the other party missed their deadline for refiling. The judge directed them to refile their lawsuit. They've asked for an additional 2 weeks and it was granted to them. I don't know if they're gonna refile, you probably know more about it than I do, but I mean, I don't see Carlinville losing the lawsuit, but I've been wrong before, but even if we did, there's nothing, I don't think there's gonna be a court that's going to, prevent us from entering into purchase agreements with Illinois Alluvial. They haven't yet.
What if they do though? If we move forward and we start spending money, that's what I'm afraid of. If we start spending money and find out that we shouldn't have, or can't, or whatever, what happens to the money that Illinois Alluvial has spent on behalf of Carlinville? Does Carlinville have to pay that back?
Again, as I understand, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ronnie, or the rest of them, Alluvial is obligated. The city of Carlinville, to my knowledge, other than my legal fees, has not spent a nickel on this. That was grant money, as everybody in this room knows. And which is part of the reason I think the lawsuit's in trouble. It was grant money. It passed through to Alluvial. It was not city of Carlinville funds. It went to Alluvial. They used it to help their formation. And this money is
Feasibility study.
in the feasibility study. And Illinois Alluvial is the one who's borrowed the 66 million. The city of Carlinville hasn't borrowed it.
But we would be pledging to pay that back with this contract.
We would be pledging to buy water from
To help
Illinois
pay back that
Alluvial.
loan.
No,
Well, okay. to
we're
buy
pledging
water.
to buy water from Illinois Alluvial.
And what if we get told we can't participate with
Well-
Illinois Alluvial?
I think that was the purpose of the lawsuit, and it's yet to come into being. I think that question is addressed to Mr. Smallhorn, and like I say, you, I think, are more familiar with the participants than I am.
Well, you know what, I'm really not. And
Okay.
that's why I'm asking for your opinion.
Well, my opinion is the lawsuit was filed for that purpose, and it has
No, I'm not
discouraged
familiar
people
with
from
where
joining.
it is now.
Where it is
and where
now
we're going.
is, the only party standing is Carlinville. And, I don't think, I may be
You don't
incorrect,
think the
but I don't
outcome
think it's
of that
going
lawsuit
anywhere.
will affect
No, I
our
don't,
compliance and our
no, I don't,
relationship with Illinois Alluvial?
hasn't yet, hasn't
it
slowed
hasn't
anything
yet.
down. I haven't seen any pleadings. Mr. Smallhorn has, and, well, Camille Brazzi, is in California. Mr. Smallhorn represented in his motion, you know, his clients are wintering there, and he has trouble communicating with them, he needs more time, he was slow getting his notice, is what he said, and so the court's directed him to refile his lawsuit. What he'll do, I don't know, but he hasn't done it yet. And Illinois Alluvial isn't part of this lawsuit. And to me, there's nothing to prevent the city of Carlinville from moving forward, because my guess is, if people are determined enough, they'll file another one. To be truthful.
Okay. Thank you. Cindy, one more thing, and we're gonna wrap this up. I think we've been doing a lot of, unless somebody has a specific question, I think all night we can do what ifs. I think at some point this is decided the way we're gonna go. Our lawyer, thinks this is a good agreement. We've discussed agreement. It'll be voted on at the council meeting on Monday. I guess if you don't like it, you can vote no, and if you like it, you can vote yes. If there's no more questions, we're gonna move on. Okay. And the questions are great. I'm not suggesting the questions weren't great. Okay. So moving, pardon me?
I said, as you rolled your eyes at me.
Well, of course I rolled my eyes.
Hey,
As you roll your eyes.
Sarah, you had a motion on the floor, I think.
A motion to move it on?
Yeah. We have a motion to move on to the next,
No, a motion to
I'm
move
gonna
it
make a recommendation.
oh, to move it to council, yes, yes. So we have a motion by Elaine Brockmeyer that we take this agreement to council. And do I have a second? Second by Randy Over.
Is it coming tomorrow night?
Yes, tomorrow
Okay.
night they're gonna discuss it too. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign.
No,
Randy, your vote was
Aye.
to move it.
Yeah. So it's 4 to 5, 4 to 1?
4 to 1.
Yes. 4 to 1, it passes, we'll take it to council on Monday.
Okay, and we'll do it again tomorrow night.
Yes, it'll be discussed tomorrow night if some other people have other questions.
Right.
Okay, next on under old business, we have the enterprise zone. And the mayor, a couple things have changed since they gave the presentation, and the mayor knows about that. And I'm gonna pass out these, do you want me to pass
Yeah.
this out?
Go ahead and pass that out, yeah. Okay, as we discussed the enterprise zone, and we heard the gentleman, the other night at our city council meeting, and they left the consulting service agreement. I hope everyone has had an opportunity to take a look at it. Since that time, I indicated on Monday night while they were here that I would be attending the enterprise zone, economic development meeting at the courthouse to discuss it. So on Wednesday night, they had their meeting in the boardroom, and there were a number of mayors present, probably, I don't know, 15, 20 of them. It was a full house to hear about the enterprise zone. They gave a wonderful presentation like they did on Monday night, and there was a lot of interest. Since that time, I received a call from Mr. Ripley, and he indicated that he had received a call from one of the communities here. They're anxious to go in. Many of them are going to go back to their city council meetings and see how much money and come in for it. I just passed out an email I received today, kind of tells you where they're at. You have the consulting package or the consulting service agreement. Again, as was indicated on Wednesday night at the meeting at the courthouse, we are the largest community for the enterprise zone. I think Staunton is, well, they had their representative, some of the other communities, Boone, Gerard, but we're one of the largest. So anyway, again, in looking through this contract, and I hope all of you have had the opportunity to do so. Right now, we have several businesses that are looking at Carlinville, and without an enterprise zone component for economic development, we would not have I don't think we would we have an enterprise zone component now. This will be a carryover, and without that component, I'm not sure we would be able to attract or retain or keep some of the businesses that we have. So it's an economic development tool, and I would strongly urge us to, again, take a look at this. I know that we have to look at the dollar amount as to what we'd be spending. If you look at phase one, you'll see that payments would be amortized over 15, 20 months, depending upon the execution date. I have looked, and Jody has been looking through our budget to see what kind of dollars we might have in the economic development area. We might have some in TIF. You can use TIF dollars if we have anything left or anything in there, okay? So that was agreed upon, TIF dollars. And I don't know about our gaming money. So we do have some money in there. We do have some categories where we can take a look at. Again, I think that we probably need to work out some type of formula as to what we as Carlinville would be willing to pay. Do we have any questions?
Mayor, just one question.
Yeah.
I forgot, how long is the enterprise zone good for? I mean,
This one, I think he said 15
15, okay.
15 years, 20
That's what
years,
he told us.
yeah,
The original one was, I think, 23 years or
Okay.
yeah,
something.
yeah.
This will be 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
Randy?
Now, this would be Carlinville, Gillespie,
It would be all of the communities,
and Macomb County.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Right now, the enterprise zone consists of Carlinville, Gillespie, and the county.
Right.
okay? The three entities. So if we have a new business or something coming in, we have to have the other two sign off of it. They have to be approved by the city council and Gillespie County Board. This one now would be all encompassing the county and, but we are good up until December of 2019. So after that, then we'll not have such, it's either December of 2019 or 2020. I think it might be
It's
2020. 2021, yeah,
And they give you a 2-year,
yeah.
Yeah, because
Turn
we have
because
to
you have to
file-
apply and do all this, so they give you 2 years to do that and
We
get
have to
approved.
apply by December 2019.
Yes.
And then
So we
after
don't
that,
renew.
then it goes before a board, and then and this is the last round. Because our enterprise zone is later in running out, we are on the back end of this program, so there's only going to be 9 given. And if we don't make the cut on the 9, we have to wait till 2028. Yeah,
I think this is a good program, I think we should go for it. You're gonna be working with the other communities to see how,
yes, how much?
the cost and,
Yeah.
okay.
A couple of them had, Warren called today and said a couple of them have made contact with him. They have to go before their respective councils to find out what kind of dollars they have, just like we do, you know, if we're going to do this. So, at that point, then I think we'll collaborate and try to get the dollars and so we can come up with 60,000 with all of us participating. Beth?
Mayor, do you know that if the process will be the same, if this goes through with all of the communities, will all of the communities have to approve an enterprise? Okay.
We have competition.
That's a,
Yeah, there's a lot of competition. In our round, the one that we'll be in, there will be 9 communities that we'll be competing against. And I don't know who they will be, I mean, I don't know how they broke out the enterprise zone. Actually, I don't think I have a list of that, but anyway, we're
well,
in
I'm
that last
assuming
part.
we would be approved. So,
Pardon?
I said, I'm assuming we would be approved.
I would hope.
After that happens, if somebody wants an enterprise zone, say in Staunton, do they then have to go before Staunton, Gillespie, Carlinville, the county?
They'll have to get
Verdon,
approval, yeah,
From everybody, okay.
yeah, they'll have to get approval if they let them in. Or they may have a clause, and that's a good question, Beth, they may have to go before that enterprise zone board, the one that we will be going through.
Oh,
So if they wanna come back, if somebody wants to join in, I don't know. It may be before the board that's looking at our app.
But you're talking about if they wanna use
They want to
enterprise
use
money,
it, right.
yes, then all
Yeah.
the entities, but I'm assuming if there's a lot of entities, they would make it where you would all meet in one place
Yeah,
yeah.
and
Have to
somehow
approve it.
make
Somehow.
it,
Yeah.
they wouldn't make these people go to all these different, anyway, I'm assuming they would come up with a process.
Sarah has worked with
To do it,
has worked
where-
with this a lot,
You know, they would get the group together and
yeah.
people would present their projects and then the group would vote
So I guess my question tonight is, for all of you, for your approval to go ahead and move the consulting service agreement, to receive approval for it. We can take it to the council on Monday night and, have the full council vote on it, to proceed, dependent upon the dollar amount.
Yeah, I'd go ahead and make that motion that we
Okay.
take that to the council Monday night.
on it. And I'll second it. Is there any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Did you hear me that time?
Thank
I
you
just
guys.
wanted to make sure you heard me.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, maybe by Monday night I'll have a firmer number to put into that contracting agreement down there, or have some type of idea by that time.
Okay,
So if this is the progress, this is the work in progress.
okay, so now we're moving to new business. I have on here Karen's new computer. Who knows about that?
I can shed a little light on that. Okay, so, the computer that Karen has back there now has Locust, which collect, where all the water bills are produced and collections and all that stuff are back there. And it has Windows 7 on the computer. And Microsoft stopped developing patches for that in 2015. And in 2020, they're gonna completely stop supporting that whatsoever. So, the chief's not here, but if he were here, he would tell you that likely that the hardware that makes up Karen's computer in there now is technically obsolete. So basically, we're looking to replace her computer with a Windows version that Windows will support, supply patches for, security, all that kind of stuff. And that's what she's looking for, or that's the reason why the new computer's on there.
I think there's,
Well, that was gonna be my question, do we have a cost on that?
she doesn't work for the city, I think people are questioning that.
Okay.
Just because she's a women and current employee.
Okay.
So I'm assuming the reason that we would replace it is because we actually have, I mean, say you replace it, what occurred, it would still go on our bill, so either way.
Well, yes, that's true, but
I
the
mean,
other side
are
of
we
this
required,
was,
I mean, assuming we're required to provide her with,
But it has our software system on it.
yes, so that's why we're replacing it, yes. And if, do we have a cost?
I mainly came to find out is
Okay, if you should
if
check
it would
it.
be okay to do that. And I know that, it's probably gonna be someplace between $1,000 and $1,500, and that's usually what that kind of stuff runs.
I believe, Sarah, ours were 1,500, and we
But
just
we could wait
replaced.
till next budget, right?
You could do that, but it's unprotected now.
Sarah, I just looked up hardware, we've got 2119 unencumbered in that section. But you could do it this year, if it's just.
Yeah. Well, what does everybody think? Do I have a motion to replace Karen's?
Well, could he come to city council with a, if he can get a
With
price
an
by the
exact
end?
price, and then we'll be voting on the price of the
Well,
computer?
I'll be the first one to tell you, about the tech guru, that would be more of Chief Haley's. So I don't wanna speak for him and say, oh yeah, he can have a price here by next Monday, but I would think he would be able to.
Could
get
put on the
you a
agenda
ballpark.
and then,
Yeah.
Yes,
Because I would assume
And I'll
that the
talk to him.
hardware requirements are gonna be pretty similar to what Karen's group, or, what Carla's group just had, so it would be in that ballpark.
okay, so we wanna put it on the agenda for Monday, and we'll deal with it on Monday?
Good.
Do we have a recommendation that we think we should? So I'm gonna make a motion that we should look into buying Karen a new computer, and we'll go to
Doug.
council on Monday. Motion made by Randy, do I have a second? Second by Elaine, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay. Next on the agenda, police pension payment, I think Jody has that.
Yes, I do, we've got the actuarial report back. Let's see, the amount that we owe for this year is $311,580. The amount we levied and paid so far is $218,673.51. That leaves a balance of $92,906.49. We budgeted $80,000 for this line this year, so, we have to pay the 92, so I guess
When does that have to be paid by?
I don't know. I don't know when it has to be paid by, if it's this month or.
It's in this.
It's in this fiscal year, yes.
Well, I think, do we need a motion to pay the 92? I don't think we have a choice, do we?
No, we don't.
Elaine, motion to,
Motion to approve.
Is it, don't you need a motion to adjust the budget?
well, we may not have that.
We're not gonna adjust the budget, we'll just, for that, we don't adjust it, we just go ahead and take the money. There's unencum, or, contingencies and other things that we don't technically
We don't need to
do
adjust the
a
budget.
budget adjustment.
All right, so I have a motion on the floor by Elaine to recommend we pay $92,906.49 toward the police pension. Do I have a second? Second by Randy Over. Do we have questions?
yeah, so what was the actual cost and what do we budget for again?
We budgeted 80
80?
for our payment, and with the actual cost was $311,580, and we levied $218,673
But we only budgeted 80,000 altogether for the whole year, correct?
on our part, yes, not, that's unlevied, yes, for us,
Okay.
unlevied.
Which is what we paid last year. Which is why. see,
But we
that-
levied more for next, I mean, this year,
Yes.
remember this year we
Yes.
levied, when we changed, we levied it for a lot more.
Which will be for next year.
Yes, it will be next.
That's listed 92,000 additional?
No, no, no,
Or 92? We're
it's
gonna make-
92,
12,
80,000
okay,
of
I was-
it.
okay, now I get it, I'm sorry. Took me a while.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Thank you.
So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, go ahead.
approve that in the Military Committee?
Well,
Well, we're, to take it to council,
Oh,
that's
okay,
what we're,
that's what
that's
you're
what
doing?
we're
Okay.
doing.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All opposed, same sign? Okay, so we're gonna suggest we pay 92,000 to council for police pension, is that okay? All right. so
Jody, can I
then-
get a copy of that too, please?
Yeah,
So the last thing we have on there is the Sears tip payments?
yes, Scott Stinson has requested money. Our balance right now that we have is $37,910.98. He is eligible for 75% of that, which is $28,433.24. That being said, we do have, under the agreement, the right to, to pay ourselves back first.
Yes.
And right now, well, approximately what we owe, and this is, it's right around $29,000 that we have
That we put out.
invested into the TIF. So, my personal feeling is, I mean, if you want to, withhold some of that 28, I think, he's looking to upgrade and do things out there. He's already done some things out there that he's requested the money for quite a while and has been patient. So,
And we've not paid him anything yet on the TIF, correct? Okay.
no, this is the first time he's asked for money. You can pay him the full 75%, it's up to you, you can do what you like, but, we do have the option to pay ourselves back first.
What do people think about that? I think Scott's been very patient, and I think we should show goodwill and give him, I don't know if the full 75%, but I think we should get pretty high on that. As far as the money paying us back, we've already spent it, it's already gone, so you could pay it back. And there would still be a little bit of money. We have 37,000, he wants 28.
That's the 75%.
We still roughly have $9,000.
Yeah, so we still have money in there that we could use to pay ourselves back. What do people think? I think we should give him his money.
I make a motion that we do the 75% of that and keep the 9,000 ourselves.
Well, and that's.
Or
what
in
we
that
would
cap,
do.
in the cap,
I mean, that's what we would naturally do,
Yeah.
because that's all he can have is 75%.
Motion by Doug Downing to pay Scott Stinson the amount, 75% of the amount we have in the TIF, which amounts to $28,433.24. Do I have a second?
One question before you second. Did you want the other 9,000 allocated to the city?
City, yes,
To
yes.
pay back? And
Reserved for us.
I would second that motion.
And have 9,000, whatever's left, to pay back the city, start paying back the city for their costs. This needs to go to council though, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so the motion is to take it to council. Do I have a second? Second by Beth Tunes. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, I don't see anything else on our agenda. Do I have a?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned by Doug Downey, seconded by
That was quick.
Elaine. All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign.
I'll be ready for that.
Thank you, everyone. It was a long meeting, I appreciate it.
She said she's not a member.
Nice short one. I'm telling you, I
What's
just
what?
want to come
Short
on.
one.
She sticks her face out. We can't say all of it. She run her mouth all night long. This is not right.
Well, things to do tomorrow.
Deanna does that. That's Deanna's place to take care of that.
I just figured it out, so I'll have it.
Dan looks very stoic.
Oh, yeah, I knew.
Stoic is the word. Carly, wait, that's your Jimmy, we can.
How big you?
You only got Steve one.
I've actually heard one of these before.
No.
Financial.
No, I don't think we are. I think
Yeah, so as long as
Good to see you. I know.
Remember, support the plan. At the end of the day, I mean, Dan, what's wrong?
new businesses, basically. Yeah, his old business was already. It wasn't approved yet. If it hasn't been reported, I'll take it.
So,